Welcome everyone to Marvel Hub. This is DK Dynamite, and today we're going to be talking about some massive spoilers for Captain Marvel. So if you don't want the movie spoiled, definitely come back to this video after you've actually seen the film. But we're going to be talking about a very specific Infinity Stone that makes an appearance in the movie, which might confuse even the most die-hard MCU fans. So that Infinity Stone is none other than the Space Stone, or the Tesseract. And this is very confusing at first when it makes an appearance in the film, because you're like, wait, didn't Howard Stark find the Tesseract and Captain Marvel somewhere in the ocean after the events of Captain America: The First Avenger? And we of course know Steve wakes up in midday 2012, right before the events of the First Avengers movie, and then from going forward after that, we know that the Tesseract was kept captive in a very secured SHIELD facility. And we see that SHIELD facility at the beginning of the Avengers film when Loki comes to steal the Tesseract. And we all know about the Grand Master plan to collect all the Infinity Stones. We had Ronan the Accuser going for the Power Stone. We had Loki going for the Space Stone. He had the Mind Stone. We know about all the Infinity Stones. But in terms of how Captain Marvel fits in with that timeline, becomes very confusing. So I've come up with two explanations to help you guys understand how the Tesseract is in Captain Marvel. So explanation number one is tying in with the original timeline that was established with how the Tesseract was found in the ocean. And keep in mind, the Tesseract has been in more films than Hawkeye, so just remember that. Now, the first explanation here has to do with Howard Stark finding the Tesseract and finding Steve frozen somewhere in the ocean. At some point after Howard Stark retrieves the Tesseract, he of course has it in a SHIELD facility, but at some point in 1989, somehow Mar-Vell, who is a very important character in Captain Marvel, somehow is able to retrieve the Tesseract or steals it from this SHIELD facility. And keep in mind, at the time, the SHIELD facility probably wasn't very secure. This is the late 80s, so there wasn't really a big advancement in technology to keep the facility secure. They weren't there yet with their security systems. So somehow she steals it, and once she does steal it, she goes ahead and puts it in her laboratory, which is in orbit. That's the first explanation. Somehow she steals it from the SHIELD facility that has it, and then once she puts it in her laboratory, the events of Captain Marvel take place, and after Goose the Cat swallows it, he of course spits it back up on Nick Fury's desk. Once he spits it up on Nick Fury's desk, from then it goes back to the OG explanation to the Tesseract being in a locked up SHIELD facility since Fury had access to it. So that's explanation number one. Explanation number two has to do with a retcon. So we're all familiar with Captain America: The First Avenger, when Steve crashed the giant plane down in the ocean. Along with him goes the Tesseract into the ocean, and they were both frozen. We know the Red Skull had the Tesseract. He was experimenting with it, creating energy-based weapons for Hydra. We all know about that, and you could still stick with the idea that Howard Stark found Steve down in the ocean, but in this case, with the retcon, Howard Stark did not find the Tesseract. Instead, Mar-Vell found the Tesseract at the bottom of the ocean, put it in her laboratory in space. Then the events of Captain Marvel happened, and the Tesseract ended up back on Earth with Nick Fury, since Goose the Cat spit it out on his desk, and boom, that's how the Tesseract ends up in a SHIELD facility. It's of course retconning the explanation we already had that Howard Stark found it in the ocean, but I'm almost 100% certain that they're going to be going with explanation number one. It would make a lot of sense if the main writer of Captain Marvel was like, you know what, I want to include the Tesseract in this film, and a whole bunch of Marvel executives came up to him or her and said, you know what, that's fine, but you have to keep in mind X, Y, and Z that was already established in previous MCU films when it comes to the Tesseract. And X, Y, and Z would be, it appeared in Captain America: The First Avenger, it went into the ocean with Steve at the very end, and Howard Stark then found it. They can still stick with that and then say, in between Howard Stark finding it and Nick Fury having it in his facility in the First Avengers film, Mar-Vell somehow stole it or found it at the SHIELD facility in 1989, kept it in her laboratory in orbit, and then after the events of Captain Marvel in 1995, it ends up back on Earth thanks to Goose the Cat spitting it out on Nick Fury's desk. And Nick Fury, of course, later becomes the director of SHIELD. He had the Tesseract, kept it in this massive shield facility, and we have very specific high clearance agents like Agent Coulson that also know about the Tesseract being locked up. It's the only Infinity Stone on Earth at that point in time, before Loki of course comes and steals it from that facility and destroys the entire shield facility as we know it. But let me know what you think of the Tesseract down below in the comments section. I think it's honestly a very interesting storyline in my opinion, because it's in between retconning a previously known explanation and somehow fitting in perfectly in between the explanation we already have. So I'm not sure which one it is. We'll probably get clarification on this in the next couple of days. I'm more than positive that someone in the film, someone who wrote it, someone who directed it, will be asked this question during an interview, and they'll easily clarify how the Space Stone fits in within Captain Marvel. But without further ado, please like, comment, and subscribe. Turn notifications on to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Marvel news and information. This has been DK Dynamite, and peace out, everyone.